Hi, can you all hear me? Okay. Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Really happy to have all the UGA students in the audience and really want to thank the team at McGuire Woods, Ann Thomas and Clayton Cox for offering us this awesome space today. Special thanks to all our sponsors, UPS Diamond Level, our Gold Level sponsors, or Platinum, Southern Company, Home Depot, Randstad, and Coca-Cola. Gold sponsors, Aflac and McGuire Woods. Our silver sponsors, Pepsi, Energy Marketers of America, and Majority Strategies, Bronze, Troutman Pepper, and our patron sponsors, Kevin Abernathy, Virginia McNally, and UCB. We're so grateful for all the support you all have shown this event last year and this year as we kick off the second annual series. And as you all know and can see from the folks sitting in the audience, the money is well spent and goes to helping students come to DC for the summer and have unpaid internships and help with the cost of living here, which is pretty unbelievable compared to Athens, Georgia. So it's something that we're all on the board very passionate about, making sure that we continue to create these opportunities to allow more UGA students to come up here and begin their careers, because we've all started on the Hill at some point, one way or another. I'm sure most of us in this room have. But before I introduce our speakers, I just want to tell you all about the second event that's going to be with Nikema Williams on July 18th. So please look out for details on that to come. And without further ado, I want to introduce Jason Lawrence, who is the Chief of Staff for Congressman Austin Scott, who is starting his 4-hour vote series. So Jason agreed to fill in for him. He has been with the congressman since 2017, and before that worked for Saxby Chambliss and Lynn Westmoreland, where he was actually my boss in the office. So I think he's, as far as chiefs of staff go, the dean of the delegation and probably the longest tenured of the Georgia delegation. So happy to have him. He is a Georgia Southern graduate for both undergrad and master's, almost as good as being a double dog, but we accept him. And our other esteemed guest, Dean Matthew Auer, who is the Dean of SPIA, as you all know and are very familiar with, who will be moderating our panel. Before this, he served as the Vice President for Academic Affairs and the Dean at Bates College in Maine, and then prior to that was at Hutton's Honor College in Indiana. So we're grateful to have him up here from Athens as well, but I will kick it off to you all. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Jordan. Mic is working? Fabulous. Mic is working, camera's working. And I want to thank you, a special thank you for joining us. We know how busy members of Congress are, and this is no exception. And we know Representative Scott would have been happy to be here, but we're delighted that you could come, because we think that you guys probably have a shared brain on a number of these issues. So these questions, which I was going to pose to him, now will be more complicated, because we'll be hearing some of your voice and some of his voice, and this would be an exemplar of such a question, which is, I was going to ask Austin Scott to tell us a little about his journey to that brought him to where he is today. I would love to hear that through you, but I also want to hear about your own journey. So it's a two-part question. We'll see how you do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks for having me. I apologize for Austin not being here. The one constitutional duty he has is to vote, and that's unfortunately happening right now, but I know he looked forward to coming, and I know hopefully we'll get him back over here. You've told me a lot about the program, so it sounds outstanding. We'll talk about Austin a little bit. This is my second time working for Congressman Scott. He goes by Austin, so I'll refer to him as Austin. He was a UGA graduate, and then came from a family of his dad was an orthopedic surgeon for years, so his dad was trained in Augusta, Georgia. Moved to Tifton and started a practice there. Austin, after graduating from UGA, moved back to Tifton, started an insurance broker firm, both from the health insurance side to all the way to retirement accounts for individuals, mostly in South Georgia and a little bit across the nation. Was very successful with that, very young. He started that when he was close to 23, 24. And then his mother actually was involved in a little bit of local politics, just enjoyed going to a lot of the events. And Austin started going to some of the events and saying, maybe I need to try to make a difference myself. They kind of, not to use the term lightly, Austin's political career, he's always kind of been the underdog. And I think that's where we really like the passion and the fight we get now from the policy perspective. But he decided he wanted to run for the state House of Representatives at some point. and he was up against a Democrat at the time, and a lot of people said, probably can't do this, it's going to take a lot of work. Well, Austin is a worker, and so he went out and won with not much support, possibly some people that were saying that he couldn't do it the whole time through, and ended up serving in the state House of Representatives up until the last 12 years, where he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. And his decision to run for the U.S. House came by a weird path of running for governor for a couple of months first, and that was when Governor Deal was running back then in a whole crowded field, right? And they said, well, you got your own U.S. congressman there that you could possibly run against him. You're very familiar with the district, that part of it's your current House seat. And so he ran against a Democrat that had been here for a long time and put up the same energy, and ended up winning. And I guess he came here in 2010. So now he's been here for 12 years and really moved up in seniority on the Agriculture Committee and Defense Committee. Back, a lot of people in this room have probably studied a lot of history with what happens here in D.C., but to be number 2 on the Agriculture Committee used to take 30 years. Now you're looking at a 10-year swing. And same thing on the Defense Committee. He'll be on what we call the top panel, but the top 5 members on the House Committee, which used to take 40 years. Now he's done it in 10 years, which is good, but it comes with a lot of hard work and experience. So we're very happy about where we're at. We've got a massive district that spans just north of Macon all the way down to the Florida line. A lot of rural communities, and so his focus right now, and it kind of goes into different areas of what Congress is going to do that week or day or what's happening in the news cycle, but it's mostly focused around agriculture and defense, and that comes with rural development and other things that I'm happy to chat about. I'll keep my story really quick. There's a lot of people in the room from the alumni situation that are sitting here that probably have the same path or something similar. Went to school in Statesboro, Georgia. Didn't really have any thoughts on politics my whole life. For my parents didn't go to college, so when I was just happy to be a student at that time. Got involved in SGA a little bit on the fraternity side too, and kind of enjoyed the, let's set up an SGA ticket. So I got onto SGA that way of working with others, specifically people that I didn't really ever work with my whole life. And I liked politics and was asked to volunteer on a campaign back then. That was when Congressman John Barrow kind of controlled that side. And so happenstance, I was in Statesboro, and there was an election every 2 years. So I volunteered, and Governor Sonny Perdue was running that year, and kind of got the bug that maybe this is something I'd want to do. Applied for an internship with Congressman Jack Kingston. Ended up staying the whole summer with him. Like many of you that are here today, started off as a lonely intern, no specialty, answering phones. I was actually already in graduate school, so I had a little bit of an ego, and that got knocked off on day 1, which is great. And so after my internship, I finished my graduate degree and said, you know what, I want to go back to D.C. I thought it was so neat that the ability you can do it at such a young age in this city. And there was no pathway for me to do that without possibly going back on an election. So I worked on an election for the same seat that Congressman Scott represents now for a year. We got beat pretty handily by Congressman Jim Marshall that Austin ended up beating, and didn't have a job. So I moved here and lived on a friend's couch, and finally got a job in some different small stuff, but in Senator Chambliss's mailroom. I was making what Jordan referred to with the cost of living is really high up here. I was making hardly nothing, and had this thought process of either I got to move up or I got to go back to South Georgia. I'm from Camilla, Georgia, so I figured I could make the same amount there and have a better lifestyle than what I was making with Senator Chambliss. So I ended up kind of networking, and moving over to Congressman Lynn Westmoreland's office for a year. Went back to Senator Chambliss's office for a year. Worked for Austin Scott for a year when he first got elected doing agricultural work, and then went and worked for Congressman Tom Graves for 3.5 years as his deputy chief, and then went back to Lynn Westmoreland's office. This is getting crazy, right? To be his deputy chief for, I think it was close to 1.5 years. Lobbied for a little bit, and then Austin Scott has a wonderful chief of staff named Joby Young, UGA graduate as well, and he was moving on to go work for Secretary Sonny Perdue at the Department of Agriculture. So that became an opening. Austin asked me to come back. You don't tell a member of Congress no too much, so I've been back for 5 years and really enjoyed it.
Wow.
So that's a long story.
That's a great
Austin's
story.
is way better.
It's a very good story also for our students to hear, and it's consistent with many other stories that we've heard where people move around and they have a lot of different experiences. Even before, you're 40 years old, you could have worked for multiple members and had lots of responsibility. So thank you for that. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about Austin's legislative priorities? And are they sort of changing over time? Have they evolved?
Yeah, you know, we speak to it from the committee perspective mostly. We have, you know, small things that pop up here and there, but, you know, sitting on the House Armed Services Committee, you know, you have different things coming up every day. He was on a 2-week CODEL recently with Chairman Smith, visiting Australia and India, and, you know, all over the world. He's traveled through the House side to Africa multiple times, South America multiple times. He's on the UN Parliamentary Committee. We talked a little bit about that earlier. He's been to Brussels on that. That's new to him. But those roles, you know, when you first are elected to Congress, we have 2 wonderful military bases, Warner Robins Air Force Base and Moody Air Force Base. But from the House side of things, being the only member from Georgia on armed services, you represent nearly the whole state at that point. And, you know, as you get more senior, not the small stuff doesn't fall off, but the aircraft and wonderful jobs that we have at Warner Robins, and they're serving around the world every day, and the fighters down at Moody, they're still priority number 1 for us, but you have so many other priorities that come in. And so, you know, what you're dealing with on day one, from writing a defense package that's going to help Georgians and help the military and help, you know, possibly veterans and their families, that all can turn upside down in one day with what's happening in Ukraine, what happened in Afghanistan. That takes you off track a little bit, but our goal is to stay inside of the defense bill, which, you know, they're marking up at subcommittee this week, so it's going to be a busy couple of weeks of that, and putting those Georgia priorities and national priorities first from our perspective. And then on the agriculture side, it's the same thing. I mean, in DC perspective, you write a farm bill, which is kind of like the National Defense Authorization, with this big package every 5 years. And then just like DC, we talk a lot about this, is the only way to learn DC is to be here, because the rules change, the timeline changes, so you might get a 1-year package. But inside of that package is a lot of funding. A lot of it is, you know, direct funding, not exactly appropriated. So you got to get that policy right. So we work on that policy, you know, years in advance. And so, but with that becomes new struggles. You know, up under the Agriculture Committee, there's so much jurisdiction, from derivatives to commodities to these clearinghouses, all the way down to what we're doing on the rural development side, to making sure people can access the internet when they go home. And I think that's the Ag Committee has so much work that, you know, they're doing every day. But like I said, it changes from time to time. We talk about world hunger, things like that are what the agriculture's priorities, you know, not only should be, but we should be putting more focus on that, and you only have a limited amount of time. So,
got it. Are there particular legislative votes over the years that, and I would ask him this directly, but to the extent that you know that he's really particularly proud of?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the wins that we get are in these large packages, right? So we have to look at it as, you know, there's never going to be a perfect vote. It's never going to be you're going to get 100% of what you want. But if you put the time and energy and build the relationships, you can get what you think is the right policy out of it. And a lot of the stuff that we pass in Congress are very minor fixes to current law. You know, one thing that we worked on recently that, you know, we don't put out there, we don't really promote, but if you were buried as a veteran in some veteran cemetery in Tennessee, and there's 2 others I'm going to forget, but if they're up under a certain floodplain, then you have to have that casket put into kind of a gasket system thing, and the families couldn't afford that, but it wasn't allowed for them to be paid for by the U.S. government. So we passed one piece of legislation that doesn't really cost that much, that, you know, allow these families to bury veterans in 3 different cemeteries. And so we look at those small wins as stuff that's helping people. And most of the wins that we get are in these bigger packages because of the 2 committees we're on. So.
Got it. Great. Why don't we shift to agriculture back again? Looking at the 8th district, of course, agriculture is hugely important to the 8th district. Looking at the demographics, something like 1 in 3 farmers in the 8th is over the age of 65. So you have this really kind of graying part of the industry. What are your thoughts on, and what are the representatives' thoughts on, you know, how to turn that around, or what sorts of incentives are there to keep people really focused on agriculture? Obviously, agriculture is a big deal for UGA as well, with the Tifton campus, which is in your jurisdiction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful question. I wish we had, you know, the dart to hit the bullseye on this one. You know, I think the number one thing is allowing people the access to get into farming, and I think that's where, you know, the University of Georgia is a great, you know, program that they have in Tifton, where people can kind of stay home and go back to the family farm, because farming's changed over the years from it's more of a business perspective than not. So getting a college education is goal number one, no matter if it's ABAC and then to UGA or however it works. But we got, in our opinion, the best land grant in the nation, right? So back home, students are able to go there. How they get back into farming and stabilize that comes with a lot of challenges. Land prices right now are, really expensive. How you come in from a woman or a minority perspective is even more challenging. But working with USDA on how do we get better grants out there, how do we get people more access to understanding how to get availability of funding if they need it, and how do they return their family back home. But that goes back to the whole rural development thing. We have this huge struggle in rural America of how do we get people that want to live in rural America and able to thrive there. We went through COVID. It's probably the biggest challenge for anybody that has a student in their household that doesn't have broadband internet. So how do we convince, not only people to stay in the farming family, but to enter the farming family is just such a huge challenge. But that, goes out to nurses and doctors, and how do we grow these rural communities where it's viable for them to live there and grow a family. And so it comes with a lot of challenges. We've really promoted a lot of what Georgia Farm Bureau is doing with their Young Farmer program, and giving people, the access to understand, more about the business side of farming. But we want people more access to the farming community, because the more farmers we have, the pricing situations are different. And a lot of the farming community want more farmers standing beside them. It's just how do you get into the land values where they're at, and access to equipment, and where we're at right now with the pricing. It seems like every time we think we're getting kind of a little bit of headway in that young farmer perspective, everything's set against you. And I think it goes to a bigger challenge is, what if you have moved back to the family farm and you're going to take it over? Can you make it work long time? And I think that's another challenge that we're starting to see face. But we work directly with UGA Tifton, discussing these every day, and USDA as well.
Appreciate that. Let's shift gears again. Talk a little bit about gun safety and responsible gun ownership. So we've had two tragic mass shootings, Buffalo and Uvalde, Texas, for the past couple of weeks. And I'm sure that this is an issue that Representative Scott is ensconced in, like everybody, all members of Congress. What do you see sort of emerging from Congress on this kind of crisis moving forward?
Yeah, on the House side, it's become just like any other issue. I think we can take this issue and talk about a lot of the other issues that are going on. Is, there's such a division on both sides, and how do you actually get into a room and discuss that? I think we always turn to the Senate to do that because they have 100 members, and it's probably an easier way to do that. And I think a lot of people are hopeful that they come up with a solution that can pass both chambers and get to the president. It's just, how do you land that plane, as we say, is how do you do it in the environment we are with social media and these hyped up, committee hearings that were today that are pretty one-sided. So we're hopeful it gets there. We want everybody to be protected. So,
yep.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Looking, and of course it's a political issue, just like everything else we've talked about. We're in an election year. If you look forward now to November, we're at the sort of the tail end of the 107th Congress. I'm interested in your thoughts and Austin's thoughts about what can be accomplished in the remainder. And then the second part of the question is, let's assume that Republicans take back control, maybe at both chambers. What do you think the priorities will be for the GOP, and what sorts of issues might end up being surprisingly bipartisan?
Yeah, being on Defense Committee, we're very hopeful we get an NDA package done this year. I think at all the challenging years we've had with an NDA package, this might be one of the easiest ones to get done, and hopefully not until December. Hopefully we can kind of get that through. I think towards the end of the year, there's going to be a lot of conversations about obviously funding the government again, but also debt limit and how do you get past that hurdle. I think the Senate is really good about working out those scenarios in real time, where the House usually has to have a pretty hard stop. So I don't think we're going to see any big packages before November, but I think there's a lot of action that could happen between November and December, with a lot of retiring members that are willing to kind of roll up their sleeves and say, let's fix the fiscal issue that we're kind of hanging over our head with the debt ceiling and stuff. Outside of that, on the House side, we're in primetime election season. We got primaries that went into runoffs last night for members that we didn't think would be in runoffs, and that's on both sides. And so that's kind of the focus of how do you get back home. It would be nice to get, we've always preached get back to regular order. Let's get back to appropriations bills. Let's get back to a budget. Let's get back to where we are all, policy experts and be able to use our expertise to get this done. GOP challenges for next year, they're going to be big. I mean, it's not easy to govern right now. There's a lot of hot topics that are popping up overnight, and how do you handle that with a conference that's going to be extremely young? I think that's some of the problem that the Democrats have faced is, you have a lot of people that are retiring, and so they're going to have the same issue. And then how do you tackle a fiscal issue with, fiscal hawks ready to jump on board on January to let's go cut the budget, but we have to govern a country. So I think it's going to be extremely hard, and I don't see that lifting up from here to the end of the year, much less if the Republicans take control.
Right. So another, I'm not sure if it's a magic bullet, but we're certainly counting on it, are our own graduates and our own students from the University of Georgia playing a role in advising, being policy analysts, being political consultants, and working in public service. Your own career actually has been really interesting, just hearing the twists and turns that you've taken, and then also that of your boss. Do you have some advice? We have a number of students here about how they should be thinking about their career in the midst of a fairly politically polarized environment, and how do they chart a career that's successful in light of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I discuss this all the time with the wonderful interns that we're able to have that we've had for years. And the situations up here are always going to be polarizing. There's no way to change that. And so the biggest thing I tell people is network. And if you haven't done it in college already, network now, because the people that are sitting beside you, it doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican or have a different view on certain issues, hot topics like gun control or gun safety, whatever you want to call it, they're going to be your friends probably for the rest of your life. And so it's been harder during COVID to kind of express that a lot, because up here it's an extremely networking town. I've gotten every job by somebody I knew, not what my resume said. I hate to beat up on colleges, but the only way to learn this business is to do it. And because like I said earlier, we change the rules every day on the House floor. We change the vote schedule every day. So, being a part of this program is just one stepping stone to having a wonderful career. And no matter what you want to do outside of here, it doesn't matter if you're a poli-sci major or whatever else. Up here, there's a job for everybody if you actually are willing to dig in and do it. But I work across the aisle every day. I think at the end of the day, having a line of communication, is key. And I'll tell you a great scenario. I got a call early, right when President Biden got elected, and it was someone that I had worked with previously, a Democrat. She worked for a Democrat from Georgia, and she called me and she said, I just wanted to reach out on behalf of the president. We're probably not going to agree on 95% of the things, but if we agree on 5%, what can we work on? And we had established that relationship a long time ago. So you never know the scenario that's going to be the next day, specifically in what we work on. And you never know what your job's going to be the next day. And more specifically, you never know who your boss is going to be the next day, because I think that's another thing up here that is very astonishing, how young people are that work in the city and how much they can attain by living and working here.
Indeed. Case in point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, somehow, some way. But, it was a long journey to where I'm at, and I'm very appreciative of getting an MPA degree and actually digging in and getting to know my professors at a college. I tell everybody that enters college, I was like, if you could just take time to get to know one professor and learn about how they got to where they are. I had the privilege of writing a couple of papers, editing a couple of books, and it was all great experiences while I was in college. And I think a lot of students, have the opportunities that a college is going to put in front of them, but are they going to take those opportunities and use them?
Right. Yeah. Right. Fabulous. Well, I've got more questions, but I don't want to totally dominate the proceedings.
Yeah.
We've got a full house. So do folks have questions for Jason? Oh, I think we've got a mic that we're going to bring around, so hold on one sec, so folks can hear you who are online.
Okay. So it's kind of seemed like politics is a really frustratingly slow process, and it seems like every day people are getting frustrated about not getting what they want. And I was just wondering if you had any examples where you felt like something happened that made you kind of realize why you like your job, or a moment of bipartisanship or anything like that you felt like it was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So our number one job every day is to help our constituents, right? So we talk about, as we sit in DC, we talk about these big policy areas and what the big hot legislation is, and things are passing 24/7. I mean, 2 bills are going to pass tonight with amendments, right? But the number one thing I'm proud of is we actually help people back home. We do a lot of casework. I have wonderful, staff that live and work in Georgia. And when one person walks in there with an issue, it might be the only thing, we might be their last line of help when it comes to veterans or Social Security, whatever else. And so I see prideful in what I do every day. I don't think about it big picture. I know that, Congress has been working on immigration for how many decades, right? I don't expect that to get done tomorrow. When it does, a package comes together, it gives you a little bit more hope that, maybe we can get something done. But I think we look at it internally because as a House member or Senate office is a little bit different. It's like a small business for us. I've got 18 employees, so making sure that their lives are great, going good, but also that they're being able to serve our constituents. So sorry to get a little bit off topic. I mean, when you get a legislative win, it feels good, but it's just like any other job. You got to put back on this suit tomorrow and try to do it again. So I think keeping that momentum going is very healthy, and having a healthy work environment too. And interns help this environment because we get tired of talking to the same 5 people that we sit around every day. So I think that's also a good thing to see people be successful in this city, and start from, like I did, my 3rd plane ride was to DC for an internship, and you're dealing with that environment every day, and you're able to see constituents every day doing tours or whatever it might be. It sounds kind of low level, but for me, it's a big deal for a family to be able to come to Washington, D.C. and see this in kind of action, right? So.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Josh. Thank you so much for coming, by the way. So you spoke a lot about Congressman Scott's priorities with farming in his role on the Ag Committee. So my question is, I mean, obviously over the past couple decades, century even, we've seen farming's role in the workforce not lose its importance, but maybe lose its numbers. So are there ways that you and your office are working to try to make sure that the number of young people and students who want to go into these fields have meaningful jobs and that they're not just being replaced with automation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some jobs can't be replaced with automation, right? Like we meet with, different companies day in and day out, and they're all supporting not just agriculture, but any type of, building a hauler for agriculture, right? That's an agriculture job. I think the biggest challenge is finding the workforce to do that. I don't think it has much to do with COVID. I think it's the quality of life. We go back to broadband all the time, right? But if you don't have it, are you going to live there, right? And because, during COVID, we were able to be back in Georgia a lot more than here, right? So I was asking a lot of, people, what are they trying to hire for? And, you can't hire somebody to do welding. And if you can, they can name their price. And so in my head, I'm like, maybe I could have made a better career doing that, living in South Georgia, right? But that's the biggest obstacle because, we want everybody to have a great, high school education. We've got wonderful schools throughout our district, right, from Houston County down. We want everybody to have the ability to go to college if they want to go to college, but then the return on investment of that degree and where they want to go. I think it's a crazy thing to think about, and this is me speaking, right? But doing MPA, and I was actually Justice Studies undergrad. There's no job at the end of that tunnel, and I think about that a lot. If you're going to be an attorney or you're going to be a doctor, you possibly have a job the next day. So what we kind of do in this, career that we do is mapping out where we're going to go, not knowing where we're going to go or what party we're going to be affiliated with. But I think that's the hardest thing is to having students understand that especially in high school that college isn't for everyone, and there are these great careers right here at home, and working with those businesses to promote that. I think we look at USDA Rural Development does a lot of good stuff with that. UGA has way different splinters on this as well that are actually helping promote these businesses and helping them grow their businesses, because in rural Georgia, we're going to get way off topic now, but in rural Georgia, we're not going to get the next Kia plant come to rural Georgia. We hope we do, and we're having great growth. But if the companies that are there can grow 5 to 10 jobs a year, that's huge for a lot of our counties, and that's what we want to be promoting every day. So.
Hey there, I'm Matthew. I am currently also in University of Georgia's MPA program, and I wanted to ask maybe what were some of the largest takeaways you had from your MPA program that have helped you the most in your career?
Yeah, I'm going to turn the MPA program upside down, right? So I convinced them to let me do a fellowship for a summer for my capstone. And colleges are different. Yours is probably a lot harder to get the degree than when I was doing mine. But at the end of the day, and I convinced them to let me do it from an appropriations perspective, because that has so much to do with an MPA, right? Which I actually do a lot of budgeting no matter how you use these degrees, right? So I flipped that upside down and used it to my advantage. I think about this all the time, from an MPA degree, I don't know what classes you're in, but ethics is the number one thing that we deal with every day. And I don't know if you have a course on that or not, but I deal with ethical questions every day. I deal with ethics in my own life every day. I deal with ethics with employees every day. And I think just going back to some of the great ethics books I had in college, which were way outdated, I think about them all the time because ethics really doesn't change. Just about upholding what the current feeling is, and inside of a very small working environment, which I'm sure all of y'all have been to Capitol or interning there now. You kind of work on top of each other. You got extremely young employees to extremely older employees that have different lifestyles and different visions of life. And so I think about ethics a lot from that perspective. And I think no matter what degree you're in, if you're not kind of following that guideline, it's what you should do. I don't know if that answers your question. No.
Hi. This kind of goes with that question as well. I am currently starting my 4th year of undergrad, like just about to graduate, and kind of toying with the idea of grad school or going straight into the workforce. I kind of see myself in a staff position or something, kind of pursuing that. Would you recommend, like, as in your personal opinion, do you think that your MPA and things like that are very beneficial in this world, or like you said, it's a lot more about just doing the work as you kind of learning as you're doing it? What would you say is, what advice do you have, I guess?
Yeah, I really enjoyed getting my MPA. I enjoyed being on a close contact relationship with my professors every day. The class sizes were small. I mean, at Georgia State, my MPA program was at night. I was in class with people that were way older than me, had perspective of life that I didn't have. But I think it's your own scenario, right? I tell a lot of people here, and sometimes it makes them frown or not, but they say, well, I'm going to go get a law degree. I'm like, well, that's great, right? Well, how are you going to use that law degree? How are you going to pay for that law degree? And I think about that for a lot of graduate school. I think, if you want to work on Capitol Hill, one of the biggest incentives we have of working on Capitol Hill is we have a student loan repayment program. I paid off all my student loans in 4 years. Essentially, I think at one point I might have been getting more money for student loans than my own salary, right? So think about your own scenario. I think also, there's so many great schools in this area too, and do a work-life balance. No matter where you're at, I recommend. If you're in graduate school, I was a graduate assistant for the 2 years I was there. Probably learned more through that than MPA degree, actually, grading papers and stuff and working with students. So I tell people, when you get done with your undergraduate, if you don't have a job already and you're not building a resume, that when you're in a graduate program, you have to be doing that. Because showing up in a big city like this with just a graduate degree isn't going to promise you a job, right? But if you have the work ethic and the work experience to go with it, I think it's very easily achievable.
Hi. Are there ever moments where you and the congressman disagree with each other on substantive issues? And if you do, how do you work through those disagreements?
Yeah, every day. I mean, from the small stuff to the large stuff, where we're going to eat lunch at, right? Like, we're not going to agree much from the beginning. I think how do you get to where his position is and how do you get to that position, right? It's all according to the scenario. I've always worked for people that don't want a yes person standing beside them. They would like to have somebody that kind of pushes back a little bit. Some answers are easy. Yeah, go ahead. That's fine, right? But others probably require a plan. Say, okay, well, we're going to try to pass this bill. You want to do it yesterday. Well, that isn't how it works, right? So how do we come up with a communications plan behind it that essentially the member of Congress, which is our principal, agrees with? And so it's not high tension. Sometimes it is, but it's working through that and having a well-versed staff on how to come to that agreement, in a short amount of time, but being able to pull the whole team together and say, all right, let's vent this out a little bit. I think a lot of, corporate business do that 24/7. In our line of work, it could be an answer that I need for an interview within 2 minutes, right? So it's all up to the scenario, but we disagree a lot. At the end of the day, he is my boss, and I understand that very, very firmly. But how do we get to the landing spot there? And usually it works out. But hopefully it does, right? So because you have a lot on the line, especially with the social media presence we have now, and how that drives kind of 24/7, 7 days a week is, some things we have long-term plans for our office, but some of those long-term plans become minute plans. So.
So Jason, you've probably fielded now, I counted close to 20 questions. What haven't we asked you that we should have asked you?
Oh, man.
And of course, that's really tricky because you're trying to answer on behalf of Congressman Scott.
Yeah. I think, I won't speak for him. I'll speak about him and a lot of members of Congress. These are, big jobs, but they take up a large space of your life. And I think that's one thing I think about when I see, Senator Chambliss retire and Senator Isaacson retire, is how much time and work that they probably put into their whole career to serve other people. And I look at my own boss, because I control his schedule 24/7. I know when he's going on family vacation. I know, when he doesn't want to go on family vacation, right? I mean, we talk through these scenarios every day of the week, and I think that's the biggest thing is, living and working around these people. It looks kind of like a part-time job when they're in D.C., but you don't get to go to the Home Depot without somebody asking a question. And I really respect that about the jobs we do, and the people that work for members of Congress these days. It's 24/7, and so when you get a job in our office at 21, 22, you're on the front line of answering phone calls with people that may not be excited about calling you that day, but the next phone call could be like we were talking about, the last line of helping someone, and that could be on the international space too. We get a lot of people that contact us for various things, and our number one motto is not to say no. Let's try to get to a yes and treat everybody the same. And I think that's a big thing for a member of Congress these days. Is when you bump into somebody on the street and they have a problem, is Austin calls me and we try to help them, right? And I think that with the social media platforms now and the volume of calls we get and the volume of mail we get, it's a full-time job. And so I really appreciate anybody that gets into public service these days, because it's extremely hard.
So I think you've spoken to this as eloquently as I've ever heard anyone speak to it. And it was really striking to hear your remark about ethics and the importance of that in your own training and having encountered that as a student. And just so many things that you've said as a theme that just sort of runs through this early evening is something that the accrediting body that oversees all of the Masters of Public Administration, Public Affairs programs, the number one thing that they're looking for, and that all the programs have to have, it's obligatory, is this real essence in the coursework of public service values. How do you instill that? And so your remarks here, I think, are really striking in that way, and it surely helps to have that kind of public service, those values and that motivation to do this really hard work. But it's hugely meaningful work, and it certainly occurs to me it's not just Congressman Scott, it's you doing the work. So thank you so much for joining us at a really busy time for all of you. And thank you, all of the students and others who've joined as corporate sponsors, this beautiful space here at McGuire Woods, and Jordan Layson, who has helped in so many ways, and my own team at the School of Public and International Affairs, Lauren Ledbetter, Sarah Baines, Caroline Pachkowski. So thank you so much, Jason, and good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We have